We also have Captain McGee, APMS, Major Navarro, APMS. We have Mr. Bird back there as well, if he can raise his hand. So these are our instructors here at the university, and I want to thank you today for coming through to talk to our cadets and our cadre about suicide, first off, and racism and extremism. The one thing that really want to kind of get out there is helping them to understand what they're soon to face in the future, or what they may face in their everyday life as soon to be commissioned officers in the United States Army at some capacity. Now, in the room right now, we have a bunch of our youngsters, so the freshmen and the sophomores who are gonna come up soon, but we're trying to mold to be great leaders. A quick introduction. I'm not gonna say everything about him, but then I'll give him an opportunity to say his thing. Is that I've known Colonel Shabazz since I was a lieutenant, first lieutenant, moving into a captain at Fort Seal, Oklahoma. I'll tell you a quick story. So when I first met him, I think we were playing basketball at the gym, and then afterwards he said, "You can't talk to the chaplain like that." And I was like, "Who's the chaplain?" I'm the chaplain. I was like, oh, my bad, sir. But then I was thinking, like, why chaplains act like that out on the court? We're all just regular people. And like I said, that was like almost 14, 13 years ago when I graduated from Captain Career Course. Coach, he was right there, like standing right next to me. My son and I went to gym, played basketball with him because he's been part of the family. He's been an advisor in my life. But he has 2 doctorate degrees. I believe he holds 4 master degrees. He wrote 2 books.
4.
Oh my bad, 4. So he wrote 4 books. And this is somebody that I'm proud of, and I think will give you a unique perspective on what it is that he's experienced in the Army to this time, and be able to provide you all some insight of what it is and to be in the Army as a commissioned officer, and the things that you will face and things you will see from his perspective as a chaplain, whether he's counseling someone or whether someone is just trying to get some things off his chest, and maybe some personal things throughout his life that he's experienced as well. And without further ado, he's a Saints fan too, so can't hold that against him. But without further ado, I'll pass it off to you, sir, and thank you for coming to speak to us today.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing?
Yes, sir.
Woo! Hey, I'm glad to be here. I'm gonna tell you what really happened on the basketball court. He was trying to intimidate me because he's much bigger than me. He's 6'8", but I'm 6'4", 6'5". And so he was looking at me and he was staring me down. I said, listen, if you whoop the chaplain, 2 things, if we have a fight, 2 things are going to happen. I said, if you beat me, people are going to say, oh my God, you beat up the chaplain, right? But if I whoop you, people are going to say, oh my God, you got whooped by the chaplain. So you can't win anyway. So that's how we met. And I've been in his life for quite some time. You guys have given me a lot to talk about, and I'm going to talk about that hopefully in a good manner. But I would prefer, I know the military is not really always set up like that, but I prefer this lecture be more dialogical. But I want to start off just giving you an example of a snapshot of who I am. So this story of mine that you see started off in a bedroom at 10 years old, where I was molested by a family friend, okay? That in itself sent me down a horrible road where I was in special education in the 8th grade, failed the 9th grade, failed the 12th grade, and I couldn't walk with my college class. So because I have a big body, like I just said, I was allowed to go to college, God knows how, but I was allowed to go to college and play sports. When I was there, I was still dealing with a lot of trauma from the molestation as a young kid. So I was fighting and I was drinking every day. And it all came to a head because it's only so much that you can go around, bullying people and talking to people bad because of your own trauma. So one night I was at a club, I was shot in the back. beat with a shovel, almost lost my life. I came back after about 6 months to the same place where I was shot at. Ended up getting in a fight with the kid, the same kid who shot me, ended up going to jail for about 2 or 3 weeks. Now, fast forward, after I got out of jail, what's the likely thing for a person to do who's down on this dump? I come into the Army. Okay, I came into the Army in 1991. From 1991 to 1992, I had received 2 Article 15s, right? Which means I was getting put out of the Army. And this is where I want to get to with you guys as leaders, as people who will be commissioned officers. It was 2 things that happened to me. One, I went into my company commander, who was a captain, like you guys will be. You'll be in charge of human beings. He said 2 things to me that I'll never forget. He said, this is a great day in the Army because we're getting rid of fecal matter like you. He said, the second thing is, I don't have to deal with this anymore because I'm getting out of the Army and I don't have to see the likes of you. Now, what this officer didn't know was he was probably the only person in the formation that I actually respected. I was a young private, hadn't seen a plausible example but him. He didn't know I used to go home at night and practice facing movements and practice being like him. He didn't know that. So his words cut me so deep, right? And this is what I'm trying to tell you guys about leadership. His words cut me so deep that I believed what he said. So I decided on that day that I was going to take my own life. I was about maybe an hour away. I had already constructed a plan. I had already had the weapons. I was already had decided to take my own life because I had a wife and 2 kids. I had never accomplished anything in my life. I thought I was dumb. I thought I couldn't achieve anything. And it was a sergeant major who came to me. I was out doing what we call extra duty. He came to me and he said, young man, come to my office. I went to his office. He talked to me for about an hour. I cried in his office and he said, I'm going to be your mentor. I'm going to help you be the person that you can be because I was once you. Why is that important for you? Because when we talk about suicide, people kind of look at where a person is in their life at that moment, but we don't really understand where that person came from. As leaders, you're going to have the insurmountable task of caring for soldiers, right? Those soldiers are just not uniforms. Those soldiers are just not name tags. Those soldiers are people. They have a past, and they have in your hands. You have either the personification of helping them to the next level or breaking them. This is how important being a leader is, in my estimation. Secondly, he gave me a topic about racism, diversity, okay? We can delve into that. My definition from a scholar's point of view, racism is an emotional commitment to ignorance, right? All of us come from different places, different avenues, different geographical locations on the map. And guess what? When you're leading people, most of those people don't care what you look like if you're treating them with dignity and respect. I can guarantee you that. This commander that I was talking about, he was Caucasian American. I thought he was the best thing on earth on the way he carried himself and the way he went about doing his business. Okay, so you're going to face a lot of adversity in the Army. You're going to face a lot of things that you're not particularly used to. Okay, so from the chaplain perspective, most of you probably haven't dealt with the number of people that I've dealt with. I deal with people from all races. I deal with people from all persuasion. I deal with people with all different genders and people who are struggling with their gender identity. I can tell you this, my particular job is to help people when they come into my office. I want them to leave stronger than they were when they came in. Why do I take that approach? because you just don't know where people are in their life. And as a leader, if you're coming into the Army to actually just for a paycheck or for a roadblock, not a roadblock, but a stepping stone to your next career, I can almost guarantee you, you're going to have an unpleasant effect on somebody's life. So I have people who come into my office who are struggling with their sexuality. I have people who come into my office who are struggling with racism, classism. I have people who come into my office who are women who are struggling because they're not being respected on the job. This is not just a chaplain thing. This is also a leader thing. All of you guys, all of you ladies are going to be affected by that. Lastly, I'll say this, and hopefully we can open it up to some questions. I'll say this, as a person who is not only a leader, but striving for excellence in your profession, you're going to have some bosses that are very unpleasant to you. You're going to have some people in your lives who are not for you and could be possibly against you. You have to learn to mature by finding mentors, by finding advocates in your life to help you through those times. I just talked to a young lieutenant today. He's an aviator. He's African-American. And he called me. He said, well, I didn't get the best report. And I'm really sad about it because I got a great work ethic. I try to get along with everybody. And I want to know, how did you deal with that? Did you ever get bad reports? I said, well, most of my reports, in my opinion, were not indicative of my work ethic, right? As you can see, I barely sleep. I got 2 doctorate degrees, 5 master's degrees. I tried to do everything that I could do to make myself competitive enough to get to this rank as a full colonel. So, but not my OERs, which you'll learn soon once you go into the Army, your evaluations, you get them once a year, sometimes twice a year. Those evaluations are subjective to the supervisor's opinion of you. The supervisor doesn't always have the total comprehensive picture of you. He only has a snapshot of what you present to him or her in meetings. So most of the time, in my opinion, the OER, or the assessment of you, is subjective. Most of that deals with interpersonal skills. Most of that deals with your emotional intelligence. Most of it deals with your maturity. If you can understand that the job is not personal, it's business. I have over 300 people at this point who I'm in charge of. Some of them I have a great relationship with. Some of them I don't. It's only human nature. To those people you have a great relationship with, you're probably going to grade them a little bit different than a person you only see 1 or 2 times. So as a leader, as a subordinate, it's your job, right? Just like I work for a 3-star right now. It's my job to help that leader understand what I'm doing. I can't read minds. Those people who are right now, we're in 20 countries. I'm the command chaplain for U.S. ARCENT. We're in 20 countries in the Middle East. I'm only going to get out there probably 7 or 8 times throughout my 2-year tenure here. I'm going to meet those people for 10, 15 minutes. It is your job to make sure that the supervisor or the boss understands your capabilities, who you are, and what you bring to the table. It's not his job really to figure that out. So anyway, I don't want to belabor the point. I would rather you guys and ladies ask questions, and let's get into a real live discussion, and I can lead you from that point. Thank you very much.
Hey, sir, this is me, Major Warren. So I'm going to shoot out the first question. Could you explain to them what you meant by emotional intelligence and making sure that they're aware of what that term means in our profession?
Yeah, emotional intelligence, it has a broad meaning, academic meaning, but in emotional intelligence is really being mature and understanding not only the organization, but your own emotions when it comes to things that you don't like. And let me give you an example. Like for me personally, because all of the trauma in my life, I don't like people screaming at me. I don't like people hollering at me. I don't like people being demeaning to me. So my XO, the time I was a captain, he was a major. He came in, I think I had missed a report or something. He came in screaming and hollering, "You're no different than anybody else. Get your SHIT stuff in on time." I said, "Hey, sir, stop. I said, if you want me to carry a 10-pound bag of feces for you, I'll do that. But you cannot come in here screaming and hollering at me like I'm a child." Now, I would handle that differently today than I did when I was a young captain. I could have simply told him, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I was actually counseling somebody who was thinking about committing suicide." But emotional intelligence and maturity, I was immature. And so I started screaming at him back, which got me what we call a 4156. I got a counseling statement and I got scolded by the battalion commander. I wasn't expressing myself properly because I was immature. I was in my feelings because he was hollering at me. So emotional intelligence is being able to keep your emotions under control, realizing that it's not personal, it's business, and being able to articulate yourself through interpersonal skills to your supervisor, telling him or her, "Sir, ma'am, this is why I was late. It'll never happen again." That's what emotional intelligence is to me in a snapshot.
Yeah, I got one more question before I pass it off to other folks, sir. As for the topic of suicide, how often do you hear those different topics? Because I kind of want them to get an understanding of that it's present, it's alive as well. How often do you see that, and kind of what advice would you give them to as a young lieutenant to help them combat that when they encounter that?
Well, from the chaplain's perspective, I got to tell you, if it's a week, I probably hear it 4 times, right? If it's a suicidal ideation or a person who's just coming up on the net telling me, at one time or another, they thought about suicide. So last year we had 88 suicides. By this time we have 114, which is up 30%. What you wonderful young people have to understand is it doesn't matter at that time and place what your personal feelings are about suicide, right? When a person comes to you, honestly, you have to take them seriously because you just don't know where they're at that stage in their life. Like I just gave you that long soliloquy about where I came from in life, and people would see me smiling and playing basketball all the time. And if I had told somebody at that time I was thinking about suicide, they would have laughed. But they didn't know the pain and the hurt that was inside of me. So when we're talking about you as leaders, people are gonna come to you all the time about suicides. Once you're a trusted leader. Secondly, the thing that you have to do, in my opinion, you have to combat ignorance. A lot of your buddies are going to be around, and they're going to say it in crowds or with you. "Oh, well, if they really wanted to kill themselves, they would already did it." Yeah, that sounds great, and it gets a good laugh because we're all, so tough, and we've probably survived some circumstances in our lives, but you really just don't know what that person is going through. Currently, the Army is dealing with 22 suicides a day, right? And so when you're the military, so when you're dealing in that respect, people are taking their lives. And I can tell you from a person who's done way too many memorial services, it's not funny when we're doing the 21 gun salute.
So I got a question, Captain McGee here. I teach the MS-1s. My question would be, what advice could you give to these young, soon-to-be lieutenants on how they can combat racism, difference in religion, or just different in cultures when they're coming from Alabama and maybe into the bigger army to a new area?
A great question. Like I said before, racism is an emotional commitment to ignorance. And so how do you combat that? I was in basic training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I'm from Louisiana. My buddy was from Selma, Alabama. He was not my buddy. He was just another guy, Caucasian American from Selma, Alabama. I was a black guy from Louisiana. I was raised a certain way. He was raised a certain way. We had a drill sergeant Faf. And so both of us were so-called alpha males. And so we were getting into it every day. And so Drill Sergeant Faf said, hey, if you guys don't stop it, he said, I know both of you are broke ASS peasants and you can't afford to leave here. He said, if you guys don't get along, I'm going to put both of you out. And so he made us get to know each other. And so at that time, I was a rap music guy, and this guy was listening to country music. And I told him I will never listen to that bull crap ever in my life. But as fate would have it, I ended up listening to one of his songs called Midnight in Montgomery. And it absolutely changed my paradigm on how I saw life. I realized at that moment that my parents and those people in my neighborhood had sold me a bad bill of goods. See, racism is an emotional commitment to ignorance. I was taught a certain way. I was taught anything on that side of the fence was bad, it's going to hurt you. This guy, he and I have maintained a 28-year friendship. He's a retired sergeant major right now. Had I not been pushed to do that, then I would have never learned and grown myself into a better person. Deference in religion. In the military, now this is going to shock you, we have 238 organized religions. I'm going to say that again because I want you to understand that. We have 238 organized religions. As a supervisor, as a lieutenant, you are responsible for those people in your formation who have different religions. What I suggest that you do, you don't have to believe in any of their religions. But what I suggest that you do is at least get to know the person before you castigate them in their particular faith group, because you don't know if we decide, if what we call in the military, if the balloon goes up and we have to go over and fight again, that person may save your life. I'm going to give you a plausible example. I am one of 5 Muslim chaplains in the United States Army, and I went to my first duty station. My battalion commander, who is a lieutenant colonel, I'm a captain. I go in, I'm so enthusiastic. I go in to shake his hand, and he says, he wouldn't shake my hand. He said, I'm sure you're a nice guy, but we have a problem with your religion and how you guys treat women. Have a nice day. My battalion commander, lieutenant colonel, didn't speak to me for 9 months. For 9 freaking months. Just so happened, I'm a basketball coach. I was coaching his son in basketball. I was going out taking care of soldiers, lifting weights, playing basketball, and eventually I made my name for myself in the battalion. And so to his credit, he came out in front of the battalion after 9 months and said, I have wronged one of my officers, and he gave me a coin, and I ended up going to pray at his house every Sunday with him and his family. He was holding on to an emotional commitment to ignorance. He didn't know me. He heard what he heard on TV or something, and he castigated me as one of those persons. Everybody doesn't think alike. Everybody in religion doesn't have the same mentality. So you as a leader, it's wrong for you to do that. Had I not been mature enough, at that time, I probably would have just quit, because the person that was caring for me, my battalion commander, actually just threw me away. So I was strong enough because I came up in the enlisted ranks to at least weather the storm for that. So my closing statement to that, I want you as young leaders to realize you're walking into the matrix. I mean, 238 organized religions. Just let that sit in your head for a moment and inculcate into your mind. 238 organized religions, and you're going to be responsible for those people. So I would ask you to expand your mind. Okay, thank you.
All right, sir. I have a follow-up to that question, sir. So I'm learning a lot about conflict resolution. And when you do experience conflict because of maybe some of these issues that our soldiers, our new lieutenants might face in the Army, what are some skills that you teach that you could help them with conflict resolution?
Oh, great question. This is what I was talking to the young man about this morning. Because in my opinion, when you're talking about conflict resolution, you're still dealing with some of the baggage and the trauma that you have inside of your mind, and you may be projecting that on the other person. So one of the things I asked him to do with his battalion commander, because most of us don't like conflict, including myself. I don't like conflict. I would just rather it just go away. But when you're talking about conflict resolution, what I was advised that you do is write out a plan on how to talk to the person. And sometimes that person is not willing to receive that. Write out a plan, schedule a time in a place that is public because the person may be a little temperamental, and then have a talk with that person. If that person is not willing to sit down and talk with you, in my opinion, you still have a written plan. You send some of your disagreements to the person, and you CC whoever is your supervisor, your mentor on that plan. This is how you resolve conflict. And it's not just a one-time thing, because all of us have different personalities. As I told you before, because of my past trauma, I hate being put down. I hate being teased. So some of my subordinates in my office right now, they're really like people who like to tease you. They like to take your weaknesses and expose them. So what I do with those persons, I'll bring them in the office and I'll explain to them, hey, these are the things that I like and these are the things that I don't like. What I'll do is I'll send to Major Warren. When I walk into a unit, I have a, it may sound a little crazy to you, but I have a 25-point, who am I, right? When I walk into a unit, I give this to my commander and I give it to my subordinates to let them know, this is who I am. These are some of my pet peeves. It may seem a little forward to you, but I think it's a part, you're stopping some of the conflict that's going to happen in your life if you kind of explain to people who you are. And that's going to take some courage, because all of us are we look so tough, but all of us internally are so fragile.
Good. Come on. You can pull your mask down and talk to you. Yep, good.
I have a question. Do you have like any pointers on how to give advice to people that are like dealing with like not being able to know their like sexuality or like identifying their gender?
Yes. Again, thank you for the question, because I did, as a chaplain, obviously I deal with that a lot. When we bring them into the office, first of all, we want to protect their anonymity, because chaplains have full protection. If I expose anything from that person, then I could be relieved from my job. And one of the things, if a person tells me that they're struggling with their sexuality, we sit down and we schedule 2 or 3 sessions and we kind of explore what that means and who they are. Now, from another perspective, now this is also going to take a lot of courage. I am a person who believes in being 100% authentically you, right? If you are a male and you think that you're a female, while most people will not agree with this, I think if you're solid and you believe that's who you are, I think that's who you should be. And let me tell you why. because this society is filled with so many people who are not authentic. This is why people, I believe, all right, there's no direct correlation to research, but I believe this is why people are depressed. This is why people who are on drugs. This is why people who have addictions, and sometimes people take their lives. From my foxhole, if that's who you believe you are, I think you should get help from a chaplain. I think you should get help from a psychologist, or whoever, to help you to have the courage to be who you are. And lastly, while most people won't agree with people who make a change like that, I have a friend right now, just graduated from the U.S. War College with me. I mean, he is an infantry guy. I mean, he is tough. Everybody respects him. And he just came out at War College. And I can tell you, while some of us disagree with it, we didn't blink an eye, because we know he is sincere. We know that he's a good person. And we know that that was just something he internally was dealing with. And now we met his partner, and it's all good, because we respect him for respecting himself, and that's the larger part. I actually love people like that. Life is so hard anyway, and if you're hiding because of people's perceptions, you're gonna live that person is gonna live a very, very difficult life. Life is already tough.
Your foot told on you.
So if somebody is like one of our peers is like struggling with something, or we think that they're struggling with something, how should we address that problem? Because like if they're struggling with something, it could be, you know, sensitive to them. How should we bring that up to them and then get them further help?
Yeah, that's a great question, honestly, because for those years that I was struggling, I didn't have anybody to talk to, because I actually, you know, you're so much inside of your head and worrying about your good friends, how they're going to think about you. But if your friend opens up to you, obviously they trust you. And because they trust you, what I would do, and this is what I do as a friend, not as a chaplain, I talk to them over a sustained period of time. I let them kind of get it all out. And then I say, hey, said person, I love you, I care about you. What I suggest is you get some help. And I had a friend who was a chaplain, and he needed help. He had PTSD, and I said, this is what I want to do with you. I said, let's get you some help, and I'll come and sit in every session with you. Well, that was a sense of comfort for him, because he thought, because he was a chaplain, and he was partly right. People are judgmental, but chaplains are really judgmental. He thought because he was a chaplain, people are going to be really judgmental with him. So one of the things I decided to do is go with him to get help. He appreciated that, and I think he's a better person for it today. So I guess what I'm suggesting to you, brother, is to whoever that person is, whoever that friend is, talk to them over a sustained period of time and find a way to get them to a safe and secure place enough where you can go and suggest help to them.
Okay, there I am.
It's right here.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Hello, kind of piggybacking off his question, but what if you kind of seeing some change of behavior, but it's maybe like a mentor or your superior, and you don't really know how to handle it because you're not really close with them, but you are seeing some changes. Like, do you have any advice for that?
Yes, that's really scary. that's really scary. I dealt with that twice. Again, my battalion commander, you guys probably don't know, well, I'll just say in the military, you could get promoted early. He was such a superstar. He was getting promoted early to every rank. So in his own mind, which he was very good, he was very smart, he was a legend. But the people, we hated him. When I say we, I mean the larger unit. So I had the unformidable task to go in and talk to him because I'm the chaplain and let him know what was going on in the formation. And I can tell you, I was terrified. I'm a captain. He's a lieutenant colonel. I mean, that's a big jump in military rank, right? He can destroy me. And I was terrified, but everybody was like, Chaplain, he's not going to listen to anybody but you. And so I go into the office and he said, I got 2 minutes, Chaplain. I got stuff to do. And so that made me more terrified. So I said, hey, sir, here's some things that people notice about you, that people respect you, but they don't like you. And I'm not trying to be vulgar here, but I almost wet my pants. I mean, because you guys are not in the military yet. When you're in the military, rank is significant. Okay, and so I was terrified. So he didn't leave in 2.5 minutes. We ended up talking for an hour, and he actually cried. I mean, because he couldn't believe it. You know, how dare a captain come in and tell me, you know, something is going on in my formation that I don't know about. It drastically changed him. He didn't make the next rank. He became more caring, more loving, and it caused he was an aviator. I was in aviation unit because aviators are kind of cocky, type A personalities. And he didn't make the next rank because he became a totally different person. He was not self-aware of what was going on. But to answer your question, it was terrifying to do that with somebody he wasn't my mentor, he was actually my boss, to do that with him. So it takes a lot of courage. And I could tell you, I had to do it another time, and it's just as scary because you're not in an inferior position, but you're in a position where you're a lower rank or lower stature than that person. So it takes a lot of courage, but I mean, if you're walking in truth, you could do it. And it doesn't always turn out good. My second one, also a lieutenant colonel, he actually fired me. No lie. he actually fired me. So I went downstairs. I told him, in the military, you guys know you got to keep weight standards. So the Fulberg colonel was a personal friend of mine, and he told me, hey, your boss is fat, and we're going to relieve him of command if he doesn't get up to weight standards in 2 weeks. So I thought it was my duty as a loyal person to go in again and tell my boss that he was overweight. Could you imagine that? To go and tell my boss he was overweight, and I just heard, sir, through the grapevine, if you don't get in shape by the following Monday, they're gonna take your command. So he slams his hand on the desk. He said, Chaplain, that's some bullshiggity, right? What right do you have to come in and say that to me? Nobody said that to me, said that to you, da, da, da. And he told me to get out of his effing office. And so I went downstairs, packing my stuff. I'm crying. I go home, tell my wife, this is like my 3rd year in the Army. I tell my wife, hey, it's over for us. I stepped in it. I shouldn't have tried to help this guy. And so at 7 o'clock that night, he called me, called me back in the office. And, you know, at this point, I think I'm going to get officially relieved. And he said, well, hey, Khalliad, sit down. Because I went in at attention and I saluted, reported to him. He said, sit down. The brigade commander just called me and you were right. I'm sorry. Could you help me like work out? So we walked around the track for like 8 hours. I mean, I almost died. But it was scary, sister. It was scary because, I mean, it didn't turn out like I thought it was. I thought I was to be his advisor, but he didn't want to hear it. So yeah, I can't tell you how to approach that because each situation is different and it's very scary.
Sir Cadet Peck here. I'm a nursing major here at UNA, and this semester I'm taking mental health nursing as one of the classes I'm taking. And I'm really starting to see the prevalence of mental illness in the country and in the world in general. And I know that statistic is particularly high in the military and among veterans. What are some things that you see contributing to mental illness for people in the Army? And what are some ways that we can help to fight that?
Well, that's a phenomenal question, and the reason it's a phenomenal question, I just put together what we called a resiliency team for my command in general. One of the things that we don't do well in the Army is all of us have our separate directorates. So I'm the chaplain. You got mental health or behavior health. You have EO. You have SHARP. You got the master resiliency team. So what I did for my foxhole to give the commander a clear picture, we got all of these groups together. We'll meet once or twice. We'll meet twice a month, and then we'll give briefings to the force. The way I see it, that's the way ahead for me. Putting all of our professionalism and professional know-how together to help the soldier understand that different avenues and different approaches to getting help. I think the problem that it still persists that you're going to run into, that I run into at this present time, the Army is an alpha male, alpha female organization, and weakness is frowned upon, right? So a person coming to get help from behavior health, everybody says, oh, well, you can go over there, there's no stigma. That's actually not true. A person coming to see the chaplain, oh, you can go see the chaplain, no problem. It's a problem because in the Army, the battle rhythm is so fast, so fierce. We're training all the time. And when you're taking time out to go take care of yourself, there seems to be a problem with that. So I can just tell you, we're trying to get after the problem, but honestly, we have not been successful because when you'll see when you're a commander, when soldiers are missing training, somehow you think it's a hit on you. And it's just sometimes a big mess. It has nothing to do with you. Sometimes people just need help. But that's a great question. We're trying to get after that right now.
Hey, sir. Piggybacking on what Cadet Peck just talked about. So even though that we start to, for the leaders, I think it's incumbent on us to still push people out in order to receive that help that they need. And could you kind of from where you view things, explain to them why it's important for them as those future lieutenants, future commissioned officers, to let individuals know that it is okay to go get that help?
Yeah, I mean, it's incumbent on them to tell those individuals to go and get help. What they're going to run into, Major Warren, is now people are going to see them as the bleeding heart leader. So they not only have to tell those people to go get help, they have to have courage enough to say that I'm going to tell those people to get help, regardless of how sometimes my leader looks at me. So it's a boomerang effect. So I think people who are leaders, they want people to go and get help. I don't think it's always that they don't want it, but they don't want the bad reflection on them. Part of the problem I had was when I had the Article 15s, it was like I had a scarlet letter on me. Nobody would talk to me. Everybody just kind of looked at me and ran away. It was this one guy, he was a sergeant major, but he had courage enough to actually come and talk to me. Most people don't have that courage. And so as leaders, what we try to teach our soldiers and our officers who are coming up in the ranks, you got to have that courage and you got to take some risks and you got to care for soldiers. Now, I don't know how it is now, but back in the days when we were non-commissioned officers, we had battle books. I knew all of my soldiers, mom's names, dad's name, kids' name. We actually knew them intimately. I don't know if they're doing that in the day's time. Everybody is so afraid and it's got so much stuff going on. I think a lot of times we got a lot of scared leadership going on.
Me again. So we talked a little bit before we come on the line about what it means to be courageous, as you just kind of mentioned. So like kind of hearing things and being able to action those things in the appropriate manner. What advice could you give to them as far as when they hear things that they even feel that are in line with racism or extremism?
Well, the advice is constant. You got to combat that stuff. You got to combat ignorance at any turn. And being courageous enough to do that is a fight within itself, because all of us, by nature, in my opinion, are kind of selfish. And we're thinking about our careers, we're thinking about our kids, we're thinking about our future. And if I'm sticking my nose in something as volatile as racism or discrimination and standing up for somebody, somehow it's going to affect my career. Somehow it's going to affect my future. I just want to get a nice house and a nice car and a nice retirement. All of us want that, right? But when you start sticking your nose or being courageous and actually leading, then some of that stuff may not happen to the level that you want it to happen. Everybody's not going to make full colonel. Everybody's not going to make lieutenant colonel. Some people just won't even make major because they understand that they're fighting a bigger fight. I just talked to a guy just yesterday, and it just ended. He cried in my arms. He's a Ranger. He's Special Forces. I mean, you know, his idea was to be a general officer. He's like the model soldier. But in his words, he saw an African-American soldier being tortured while downrange, and he stood up against his commander, who was his friend, and the commander torched him on his evaluation. And so because of that one bad evaluation, this guy will never be a lieutenant colonel, and he will retire as a major. And so I guess what I'm telling you is he was so sad. And what I was looking for him to say was, I'm glad I did it. But what I caught on the other side was he was saying indirectly, well, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I would have achieved my goals, right? That's what he's sad about. That's what he's broken about. That's what he'll have to deal with the rest of his life. So when you're talking about courage, Major Warren, you're talking about transcending your ideas and your goals and understanding they may not happen if you're standing up for a young soldier who's being discriminated against. Right now in the sharp world, I can tell you it is out of control, right? We sit in the sexual assault review boards, and I tell you, it is combustible. And a lot of times it's the leaders who are senior leaders who are getting caught into situations with young males and young females and losing their careers. Somebody had to stand up and tell on these individuals. And I can tell you, sometimes their careers suffer for that. So it takes a lot of courage. But if you have values and integrity, I think it's possible to combat some of that stuff. But you have to develop that within yourself.
For the cadets here, you know, they're kind of like straddling two fences, right? So we talk a little bit about the university life, because, you know, they're still civilians, but at the same time, with the things that we're trying to teach them that are in congruence with what the Army is. So they're kind of like the cadet civilian Army person that's kind of like in the mix of both, but heading toward being a commissioned officer. What kind of advice would you give them as far as moving toward being a commissioned officer, but also just being that civilian in society here at the university, if that kind of makes sense?
Run now. No, it's a drastic change from being a civilian to a commissioned officer, because at the end of the day, once you jump the fence to become a commissioned officer, you not only have rules and regulations, you got all the kind of indirect rules and regulations that will govern your life, you know, right? And so once you jump the fence on this side of the house, your life changes forever. And so I have a piece of advice for you. Either you're gonna eat it, swallow it, and digest it, or you're gonna suffer the 3 or 4 years that that you're in the military. A lot of friends came in, they kind of had 1 foot on land, 1 foot on water, and they suffered because this culture of being in the Army, I mean, you gotta be in it or you're not. Because some people like me, I'm serious about the military. I've always been serious about my career. I've always been a serious person once I decided to be commissioned. And people who are not as serious as me, I have a serious problem with them. So if and when you jump the fence, I would suggest you get a mentor and help you to understand the culture of what we call the commissioned officer side. I remember being down in the motor pool. You don't have any classes on how to be a great officer. And I was talking to a Medal of Honor recipient. I had a sucker in my mouth and I saluted him. And I can tell you, my commander went nuts. I mean, he went crazy. Took me behind the vehicle and just tore me a new butthole. Officers don't salute with candy in their mouth. Officers don't do this and officers don't do that. And I'm like, hey, the officers need to get a manual in my mind, like telling us all the things we can and we can't do. But it's a job within a job of being an officer. Like just something as simple as you're going out to the field and you're eating before your soldiers. If you want to get ripped to shreds, go to the DFAC and see soldiers in front of you and you jump in front of them and go and eat. Now, officers don't do that. So it's got a long line of things that we as officers are committed to in leadership. So if you can't handle that, you're going to struggle, honestly.
Hey, sir, Major Navarro here, APMS here at the University of North Alabama. I appreciate you giving your time for all of us today and kind of give us some of this insight from where you sit. One of the conversations we were having just before we kind of piped in with you with the cadets here was the fact that all these topics are very complex. And right now, not only across the Army, but as well across our society, we see these different topics tearing at the fabric that or the foundation that we're all built on as of right now. And highlighting the fact that at the end of the day, whether you're a teammate, part of the Army family, or from a leadership perspective, at the end of the day, the way you combat all these things or get after it and why it actually matters is because at the end of the day, it's all about your soldiers, your team, your family to make sure everybody's taken care of. If you could for us, I know you have restrictions on some of the details that you can provide, but if you just pick one of the topics, whether it's sexual assault or discrimination or what have you, can you just provide one example from a leadership perspective of kind of an event that took place and the actions or lack thereof that those leaders took and the positive or negative impact that it had on the organization? You can give one positive example or negative, however you want to do it, sir.
Yeah, I'll roll it up. It just happened in my last unit before I went to War College. Young captain, female soldier, very pretty, very outgoing. She just took care of everybody. She was the general's aide. Sometimes people took her politeness for flirting. First of all, that's an assumption. The first sergeant was one of those persons. She was being nice to him. They clown around and laugh all the time. And one day he just laid a big, fat, wet kiss on her. She's married, he's married, and she was absolutely incensed. All right. She was crying. She came down to the office. She said, "Chaplain, oh my God, the first sergeant just kissed me. What am I going to do?" So my job is confidential. I can't say anything. I said, if you give me permission, I'll go to the commander. I'll go to the sergeant major. She gave me permission. I went to the sergeant major, and the sergeant major. This is part of the problem with the Army. The sergeant major was friends with the guy. The first thing the sergeant major said, "Oh my God, what is this going to do to his career? Can we talk to the captain to make sure this doesn't hurt his career?" I'm the chaplain. I'm not supposed to cuss. I said, "What the hell what did you just say?" What did you just say, Sergeant Major? Like, really? You worrying about his career? This guy just violated this woman, right? She has a husband. She has 3 kids. She go home and tell her husband he gonna come up here and kill this guy. You worried about his career? He said, "Chaplain, it was a mistake." I said, "You don't know that." Anyway, I don't want to get into all of the specifics, but had she not given me permission to go to the commanding general, this guy probably would still be in the Army. I told the CG, the commanding general, he ended up getting court-martialed, and he's out of the Army. Got busted down from E8 to E7. But the problem sometimes in these organizations that are ran by males, is the first thing they think of is, how do we save this guy's career? She'll get over it. That's absolutely wrong without equivocation. All of the, at least just from my foxhole here, all of the sexual assaults right now, let me just see, from the last meeting we had, if we had 24 sexual assault cases, they were with men from E7 and above to women who were E6 and below. So you're talking about a 25 year age difference. My conclusions, again, without any empirical research, is these are men who are in the twilight of their careers. They have lost some measure of themselves. So now they're using their rank, prestige, and status to push up on these young ladies. The young ladies rebuff that because they're just trying to be good soldiers, and they end up continuing to sexually be a predator to those young ladies, and some of them even get assaulted. So I guess to round out the conversation, Major, is a lot of times I think it's up to us, at least this word keeps coming back with courage. Even if it's your buddy, if he does something wrong, you shouldn't protect his backside because he's violating a woman, and she should be protected first.
Sir, so I guess some of the things that you touched on as far as having that courage in order to step forward, we did kind of talk a little bit about, at times, we feel like you said, if I say something, then I'm at risk.
Yes.
I spoke a little bit earlier about the situations that we put ourselves in, and whether you're male or female, with the conversations that you have, or in the conversations that people who may need your help overhear.
Yes.
So for instance, let's say if me and Tyser was joking about something and somebody overheard us, they would assume that Tyser, myself, and whoever else was in the group with us all feel that way, which kind of makes it hard for us as leaders, for the people who really need that help to come to us in order to help solve any situation that they may be in. I call it taking yourself out of the loop, because now, since you involve yourself in a conversation that you may not necessarily agree in with, other people are seeing you involved in it, and it's hard for them to come to you, and you might have just been that person that could have saved a life or could have provided some assistance to other people. I guess to kind of close this thing out a little bit, what would you say to those people who are involved in those situations but still try to say, I'm not like that, that was them? So what do you got for those people who are hanging around those people who are engaged in those type of conversations?
Well, you know me personally. I have one of my philosophy is intercept ignorance. If you're hanging around that type of behavior, if you're snickering at it, if you're laughing about it, you are them. So if you're not intercepting that type of ignorance, then you're just as pliable, in my opinion. One of the things about leadership is the loneliest place in the world. I mean, it is absolutely lonely because you're sitting on the perch and you're watching all things that are going on below you, and you can't afford to get involved in those situations. I just had to give a subordinate a counseling statement the other day because I believe, one of the things the scripture says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? I believe even if you're joking, sometimes there's a lot of truth in there. And so we were having a VTC, a video call like this, and he is my deputy that's in Kuwait, in Qatar. And he was laughing and joking with one of his subordinates, and he said, "Yeah, he's pretty worthless, sir, and he doesn't do any work anyway." And so what I did was I said, "Lieutenant Colonel so and so, please, after this VTC, I need to speak with you." And so I spoke with him. I had filled out I had my deputy fill out a counseling statement for him and send it to him to be signed. One of the things I reprimanded him about was, if you are a leader, you can't say pejorative or derogatory things to your supervisor. You are opening an avenue for the other people to tease people, right? This is not high school. We're in the United States Army. You don't get to tease people. You may say you were joking, but there's somewhere inside of you that you may believe that. And the people who are in that conversation, they may say, "Oh man, Colonel Shabazz don't really like Major Warren. You see how you're always putting him down?" So the second part of what you're saying, Major Warren, is now I have created an environment where people won't come and talk to me because I'm judgmental and I'll put you down in front of people. So you are absolutely correct. Again, let's go back to this word courageous. To be a real leader, you got to be courageous. You got to tell people, hey, I don't indulge in those type of conversations. When you do that, people are going to say, oh, he's uppity. Oh, he thinks he's something because he's the PME. He thinks he's something because he's a major. No, I am a leader. Leaders protect their subordinates and leaders protect their soldiers. And so I got to keep myself above reproach and intercept that type of ignorance. I think I lost you guys. I see nothing but a screen and you guys are gone. Hello.
Hey, Chaplain, this is Colonel Tencio. I'm their recruiter, and one of the things you mentioned in the suicide, did you see in all of your time working with this? I had 2 suicides. One actually killed himself. The other was an attempt. He was very fortunate that he didn't kill himself. But did you see positive stress at times being a cause for suicide? I mean, everything going for that soldier, you were thinking that, man, he is promoted, just got promoted, he's got a pay raise, he's becoming a team leader and so forth. And then next step, he takes a rifle and kills himself. Do you see positive stress being an issue too?
Commander, absolutely. I don't think it's positive stress. I think it is the zero tolerance. We just had an E7. I mean, the guy was tabbed out. He was a remarkable soldier. And I don't think we, in the Army now, because it's zero tolerance, I don't think we give our leaders not an opportunity any way back from failure. I think somebody in his office saw him watching some child porn or whatever. I mean, it's a stellar guy. He was getting ready to go to Ranger School and all that kind of stuff. And he was a superstar, but Audie Murphy and all that stuff. But once they found a crack in his armor, he couldn't take it. And he ended up, going out to the lake and killing himself. So I think what you're going to positive stress, yes, that there are some times where there's too much stress, even though it seems that the kid or the soldier is doing the right thing. But I think sometimes it's a failure of leadership. We kind of pushing, and we're not explaining to our soldiers why we're pushing. I'm gonna give you an example. My deputy, it's his first year on the job. I'm obviously coming in with way more knowledge than him. And yesterday, I just saw him like stressed. I mean, I think he's doing a good job, but he's always battling my perceptions. And I told him, hey man, why don't you just take the morning off? No, sir, I'm good. I said, listen, man, take the morning off. Take a mental stress break. You're doing a phenomenal job. It's a lot to handle, okay? I'll cover down for you. And I don't think sometimes as leaders we do that because for whatever reasons, I won't give any causative agents, but for whatever reasons. And so I do agree, a soldier can look like he is strapped. He can look like he is handling everything, but we don't know what's going on at home. We don't know what's going on in his children's life. And when I dug down into my deputy, while he was really stressed, it really wasn't a job. Somebody had just hacked his account and stole almost $10,000 out of his account. But he would have never told me that because he didn't want to look weak in front of his so-called boss. So that's my synopsis of that, Commander.
Appreciate it.
Sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, sir. We're gonna power this thing down right now. First of all, I want to appreciate your time that you gave to us today in the University of North Alabama and our cadets and cadre. I think we really got some good stuff out of this today. I'm fortunate to have some folks some young folks who are willing to get up and say what's on their mind in order to try to help the team organization as a whole and get the things from your perspective. I'm gonna pass it off to you for a hot second so you can give us some parting shots and then we're gonna shut this down and continue on raising leaders, sir.
Yeah, tell your team next time you guys need to feed me. I don't care if it's virtual or not, man. I'm starving over here. No, I had a phenomenal time, and what I could tell you guys, honestly, from my foxhole, a lot of that stuff comes. A lot of leadership principles come through reading, studying your leaders, studying the kind of leader that you want to be, good or bad, because we can learn from everybody. And we kept bringing up this common theme of courage. To be a leader is going to take a lot of courage. And we're not just talking about pointing out racism or, religion and all that stuff. Just being a leader. You got enough to deal with just being a leader. And so when you're talking about being a leader, you can't just go to me, be haphazard and say, well, now I'm a lieutenant, so I'm a leader. No, you got everybody in your formation that you can learn from. One of the things I think that helped me, honestly, was I just kind of shut up and I kind of listen to people. When I'm talking to my mentors, I have a pen and I have a pad and I let them talk. Unfortunately, some of my mentees, I never get to give them any wisdom because they talk the whole conversation, right? So if I can impart any knowledge on you, study those PMEs there, study that commander there, see how they action things, see how they talk, see how they walk, see what their level of professionalism is. And honestly, you can learn how to lead from them, whether good or bad. And that's what I do. Every person that I come in contact with, whether they're subordinates or they're leaders, I'm always gleaming something from them to put it into my leadership ruck. So, hey, thank you guys so much. I really wanted to be there. My commanding general said nobody's traveling right now since he's a 3-star general. I couldn't come. I'm a lot bigger than he is, but if I would have whooped him, he'd have put me in jail. So, all right. Thank you, guys. Pleasure. Hope to see you one day.
All right, sir. Take care.
All right, Commander. We'll see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well.
Bye-bye.